About it for the great John Rothmann, everyone. John, remind everyone where you are on this position of what should happen with Joe Biden right now.
Well, I've advocated ever since the joint appearance, I won't call it a debate, for Joe Biden to relinquish the nomination and turn it to Kamala Harris. Every day this mounts, and you have reported Adam Schiff's shift. This is a major development because Adam Schiff is not only a critical member of the House, but he will be a member of the United States Senate. If Donald Trump wins the presidency, the course of American history changes profoundly. And so I'm hoping that Joe Biden, despite my support for him over many years, decides not to be the Democratic nominee. And let me say a quick word about J.D. Vance. I will be listening tonight avidly to his presentation. He is far to the right politically. And you may know that the theme of the National Convention of the Republicans tonight is national security. And J.D. Vance opposes aid to Ukraine. And I think that says it all. It presents a complete contrast with the Republican Party of Ronald Reagan, for instance. So we'll be watching that. And of course, I'm not sure if it's up on his website today, but it was yesterday that he opposes abortion completely. That will be a major issue. And so I'm looking to a lot of different things as the days go by.
Just on the Biden issue, I'm seeing this. Adam should shut his mouth, Mindy says. I think we are going to lose. Is there a quality of this that should be done behind closed doors, or are you? This is the way Washington works and politics works. People come out and they publicly make statements of the sort that Schiff did.
He's being approached behind closed doors. The poll results, which you reported earlier, and I do listen to your program, polls show him in 14 states having severe problems. He's even having problems in safe states, so to speak, safe Democratic states. So I think the handwriting is on the wall. For Joe Biden, it's a problem. He really believes he's doing a great job, and I think he has. But you understand that if we stand with Joe Biden, that it is almost certain that Kamala Harris will become president in the course of another term. And it's also clear that Democrats in the House and Senate are very concerned about the down ballot effect of Joe Biden. And I want to repeat, I've always been a fan of Joe Biden. I like him very much. The best biography of Joe Biden was written by Jules Witkover several years ago. It describes his story, which is a tremendous American story. But you cannot help Joe Biden now, as you've said, and as Kim said. One of the most important things is a president has to be able to be articulate and clear and precise. You know what it reminds me of, and I want to use an analogy, and it's not the same analogy, but interesting. Our colleague Gene Burns, of blessed memory, was one of the greatest talk shows, one of the most, a towering intellectual giant. He had his stroke, and he was no longer able to do what the old Gene Burns had done. His mind was clear, but he couldn't articulate. And I think one of the most important single things for people to understand is you get to a point where you have to acknowledge your own inability to function. And despite Joe Biden's brilliant record, and they're talking about all the great things he's done, you cannot go backward with Joe Biden. He's not the man he was 20 years ago or 10 years ago or frankly 4 years ago.
You remind me also with the Gene Burns reference of Dick Clark. You know, Dick Clark was this guy who was a transformative figure from the standpoint of everything he did. You know, he started as this host of a rock and roll show, I guess, in the early 60s. And as television
50s.
evolved...
In 50s, the 50s.
Okay, 50s and 60s. It was American Bandstand, was that what it was called? And it was like, you know, every week.
And it was a tremendous show.
Yeah, it had all this viewership.
And he seemed ageless.
Yes, he was a young guy who seemed to always stay young. And he went on to host a $10,000 pyramid or whatever, $100,000 pyramid.
And don't forget New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve with Dick Clark was an American tradition.
Exactly. And so this brings me to the New Year's Eve thing because he had a stroke. And he had lost his ability to speak in that beautiful, smooth fluency that had informed his entire TV career. But he wanted to be on, and they felt it was called Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve. I think they still call it Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve. And they had him on and he could speak sort of, but it was, he sounded like a guy that had a stroke. And it was maybe him hanging on too long, or maybe it was a rallying cry for those others who had had strokes and saw him. So I can see it from both perspectives. But one thing I always wondered was, does Dick think he sounds better than he does? Or, you know what I mean? To what extent does Joe Biden feel as though it's fine? I mean, I get it. Sometimes I, confuse words but I've been doing that all my career.
But he
In other
hasn't
words,
done it
yeah.
his whole career. Those of us who've known him, let me just point out to you one quick thing. If Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee, and if Joe Biden as president is still functioning, I guarantee you that she will have him everywhere in the campaign. He'll campaign as vigorously against Donald Trump as he would have if he had been the candidate. And nobody is asking Joe Biden to leave the political stage. They're simply saying, recognize that the next 4 years is going to be, frankly, not possible for you to do. All of this will come to a head after the Republican convention. That is the general plan. I am glad to see, and I want to comment on this, that the Democrats are going to go ahead with their convention. They're not going to do the early roll call, evidently. That's what we were told this morning, although they were doing it not because of Joe Biden, but because of Ohio. There is a rule in Ohio in terms of a date. I think they've modified it. Whoever the nominee of the Democratic Party is has to be on the ballot in all 50 states, and that's going to be critical. One other quick point, you will note that Donald Trump is talking with Robert Kennedy Jr., and the whole goal there for President Trump is to bring the Kennedy people on board. Let me tell you that they agree on vaccines, and that's the problem. We're just going to have to see how this develops. It's a fascinating moment.
When Biden has an audience, he comes alive, says Gordon. The note from PT is that if Harris stumbles, and she will, because she is a lightning rod, let's assume, okay, so she stumbles, then there's no going back to Biden, who has successfully guided the ship. You'll split the Democratic Party forever if you dump Harris. Wait 2 years and Joe
Harris
quit.
isn't going to be dumped. And I've said this repeatedly, those of you who have listened to my podcast or have listened to me here with Mark, if for some reason Joe Biden withdraws, Kamala Harris will be the Democratic nominee. There's no question about it. By the way, Biden has already indicated that. The delegates are already pledged, and Biden will direct them. There will not be an open convention. This is not a case where you could have favorite son candidates or where you could have dark horse candidates, all the rest, because the structure of the conventions is different. One of my favorite books is Convention Decisions and Voting Records, which is a compilation of all the political conventions since 1832. And believe me, it is a book of tremendous strength and value, but it's not relevant today. Look, I was talking to somebody this morning who pointed out the Republicans aren't holding a convention. They're holding a media presentation. They're selling themselves to the American people. There's no great debate. When I attended the Republican convention of 1964, there was a great debate on the floor. Barry Goldwater's people may have won, but there was a debate, and it was vigorous, and you heard Nelson Rockefeller and George Romney being booed and hissed, and it was an amazing moment. We don't have conventions like that anymore. And I regret that because, frankly, watching that dynamic was one of the greatest fun moments of my life.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, things have changed, just the way the debate structure has changed and who controls the debate structure. I mean, it used to be the League of Women Voters who handled the debating, and it was...
And I say before the League of Women Voters, the Nixon-Kennedy debate, the 4 appearances, 3 together and 1 was done by cross-continent different studios, they worked out what the details were. And anchor, Howard K. Smith, as it turns out, was the first one. All the rules were established. And when there was that lapse, because there were no debates again until 1976, then the League of Women Voters and the Presidential Debate Commission all became entwined. And it's a very unfortunate thing, because to me, a debate is having 2 people stand on a stage and argue a particular subject. The last time that happened was when Dewey and Stassen debated on May 17th, 1948, on the question of whether the Communist Party should be abolished in the United States. By the way, did you hear one other thing
Please
today?
stop showing off, John. We don't need that kind of.
You don't
That was
need that? I
it was
just want to give you
that was really.
context.
I get it. Okay, you know history. Okay, I got it. All
I'm
right.
so glad because I was
Now,
afraid you didn't get it.
John, I wonder if you could comment on something that Biden is doing. This is not related to whether he's going to stay in the race or not, but he is doing something, and I have to say, well, I'll just let you comment first and then I'll comment on it. He is planning to endorse term limits for Supreme Court justices, is
Appalling.
Joe Biden, and a new ethics code. This, according to the Washington Post. The, again, the right has continued to upend all the U.S. legal precedent with ethics and recusal sort of being off of the table. Biden is calling for a new constitutional amendment that would also eliminate sweeping immunity for presidents and other officials. So he's looking to leapfrog the Supreme Court decision. And again, he's looking to get a code of ethics.
Well, I did that this morning, by the way, on my own podcast, Around the Political World with John Rothmann. I am opposed to that kind of reform. I don't think it's a reform. I think it's a retrogression. Let me be clear. Franklin Roosevelt tried that in 1937 with a court packing plan. If I'd been alive then, I would have opposed it, as I would oppose Biden on any of this. I understand he's trying to bring along the progressive, so-called progressive wing of the Democratic Party, but it's a mistake. And by the way, there will be no constitutional amendment because the states won't approve it.
Of course,
won't approve it. And
right.
I don't even think you get the kind of support you need in the House and in the Senate. So
the real move is to expand the court, and that's what I think the Republicans may do. But this is
no, I don't. They don't have to. They don't. The Republicans don't have to vote to expand the court. They control the court now. And if Donald Trump is elected, every time there's a vacancy, they'll just put another conservative justice on the court. They don't have any compelling need to do that. And I would point out the Democrats make a big mistake because let's assume it all passed and Biden was able to add people. Well, a Republican would come into office, and what that Republican would do would be to nominate more people who are conservative given the opportunity. The whole thing makes no sense except for Joe Biden trying to pacify some in the Democratic Party. It's the same mistake Franklin Roosevelt made back in 1937. And if the Biden people were familiar with history, they'd understand what a foolish gesture it is.
So what's going to happen, John?
I don't have tea leaves. The only thing I can tell you is I predicted, as you will recall, the nomination of Senator Vance. I thought it was a very logical thing to do. My son sent me an email saying, "Dad, how did you know? You were right." Well, you could have just as easily been wrong. But the simple fact is some things are logically deduced. That is why key Democrats are going to Joe Biden and saying to him, you cannot be the candidate. We will lose. We will lose with the presidency, the House, and the Senate. And the thought that Donald Trump would control then essentially all the branches of government, and I include the Supreme Court in that, is horrifying to those who oppose him, to the people who support him, the people at the Republican National Convention. They're nothing but cheers.
People are asking for Mr. Predicto on whether or not Biden. Well, I'll do it after John's segment is complete. I just think you've been around politics for so long, John, that you have a sense, especially California politics. And now there's a high-profile California congressperson who likely will be senator, who is calling for a change at the top of the ticket. It feels as though the waters are rising, and they'll eventually reach the Lido deck where Joe Biden resides. But it coexists with the fact that Joe Biden has really, really limited his circle now. They say that it's hard to get to him with some of this information, with some of the polling, et cetera.
He knows. You can't hide from news. He's aware of everything. Let me tell you, if I were Joe Biden, the most powerful man in the world and a successful president in his mind over the last 3.5 years, I would want to hold on to power as well. I understand that, but you have to know when enough is enough. You have to know when you can't do it anymore. And there's time still to work this out. But let me once again repeat that if Joe Biden withdraws, Kamala Harris will be the nominee. The Democrats really have no other alternative because their rules are so restrictive. This is not the days when you could have favorite son candidates, when you could have dark horses, when you could have an open convention. It just isn't. It isn't practical and isn't going to happen. So then the question becomes when Joe Biden will make his decision. He can do it right up to the time of the convention, I guess.
Put that back up there if you would, Albert or Kim. That was a good question from Sandy. John Rothman, you really don't think it would make the Dems look weak and ununified if Biden steps down? I just feel like it would send the wrong message, and there's no way we'd win, says Sandy.
Why are you yelling?
Speak up to that, John.
Sandy, I understand your point of view, but forget the politics and just think about Joe Biden. A lot of people that I talk to say, we agree with Biden, but we're not going to vote for him again because he's not capable anymore of doing the job as president. It's just that simple. Do you think I like saying that? Do you think, I haven't talked to Adam Schiff about it, but I can tell you Adam Schiff is a great fan of Joe Biden's. How do you think he feels? But there are limitations and you have to be able to recognize them. May I give you one example? My father-in-law, of blessed memory, about 5 years before he died, developed certain indications that he wasn't able to control things anymore. He just turned it over to his son. He said, I'm not capable anymore. The toughest thing a person can do is to announce and concede their own limitations. But if the Democrats nominate Joe Biden, if he insists, we will rally around Joe Biden because the alternative is Donald Trump. And remember, people don't just vote for, they vote against. And I think there are enough people in this country who oppose Donald Trump and oppose what he stands for that he can never get a majority of the country.
Well, the women in this country could really drive that kind of negative vote, but getting motivated is a big thing, and people are not particularly motivated to pull the lever for the Biden-Harris ticket. It's just,
But they will be motivated not to vote for Trump and Vance.
Sure.
And let me tell you, they're going to make a case. You've heard the Republicans. And remember, the whole point of a convention is to see what kind of bounce you get. Do you remember when the Democratic convention ended, when Michael Dukakis was nominated for president, that he had a 17-point lead over George H.W. Bush? Anything can happen in an election. And may I just say that that includes attempted assassinations, that includes new scandals, that includes a whole bunch of things. I'm very concerned for the country. I have opposed Donald Trump, and I'm not here as a partisan. I've opposed Donald Trump because I disagree with him on his policies. I disagree with his personality, the way he approaches things. I've articulated that clearly and precisely. But I am cognizant of the fact that people will not necessarily vote for a president who is enfeebled. You've got to have the ability to stand before the people and speak. You know what I'd look forward to? Kamala Harris debating Donald Trump. You want to see an exciting debate? That would be a debate to witness. She is a prosecutor, and those of us who've known her for years know that her experience as district attorney, as Attorney General of California, she demonstrated that ability in the courtroom. And
there's a lot of this, looking forward to debates. This is the wet dream that everybody has of the Democrats, and I'm so sick of it. With all respect, I don't see even that Donald Trump needs to debate anybody. He is ahead in every poll in more and more states, in swing states.
You're right.
Why would he possibly even want to get on the debate stage with Kamala
You're
Harris?
Right. That was exactly Lyndon
Hillary
Johnson's.
Hillary Clinton was a brilliant person as well, in command of many facts, Secretary of State. She knew Washington inside and out. She certainly could debate with the best of them. And he held his own on the stage with her by being a bully. Again, it's a TV event. It's not a debate.
Let me remind you, Johnson refused to debate Goldwater. Nixon refused to debate Humphrey or McGovern. It is the choice of the candidate. A candidate can just say no. And It is possible that Donald Trump will just say no. Remember, there is a scheduled debate in September between Biden and Trump. If Biden is the nominee for the presidency of the Democratic Party, then there will be a debate. Trump is firmly committed, and Trump believes he can beat Biden in a debate again.
He can. He absolutely can, because he's completely unmoored. He doesn't have any allegiance to the truth. He makes stuff up, says it, says it
Really?
loudly, says it clearly, and then Joe Biden slurs a bunch of stuff, stutters through it, which is sad. I wish he could express himself more clearly. And then at the end of it, it's like, wow, that was pathetic.
You've made the case.
Yeah.
And that's the case that is being made now to the Biden family and to by the Democrats in the House and Senate.
So
look, it's
this
a
is
very
interesting.
sad. It's a sad moment. It's not a happy moment at all.
More and more people, I just want you to comment on this generally, are saying, and there will be RNC momentum. As John says, you typically get a bump off of the convention. So the Dems will get it and the Republicans will get it. The increasing thing I'm seeing is like this. I do believe it's a mistake for doing it right now. We don't look seamless. You know, the more we talk about this, the more this creates a tumult that can be exploited politically by the right. Can you speak to that? I mean, this is sort of what this open question as to who should be top of ticket seems to me appropriate right now. But are we hurting the ticket by talking about it?
Doesn't matter whether we think we're hurting it or not. The conversation's happening. When you have Adam Schiff, who will be the next United States Senator from this great state of California, and a man who is highly regarded by his colleagues, making this statement publicly, and when we know that after the Republican convention, there will be more Democrats saying the same thing, you can't hide in a corner. You've got to confront the reality. And the reality is that Joe Biden, it isn't that people don't like him. It isn't that people don't appreciate what he's done for the country. People are simply saying, we don't think he's up to the task. And I want to say one more time, so everyone understands, it pains me to say that. Pains me tremendously to say that, because Joe Biden, frankly, deserves better. But this is the political reality. There'll be more discussion, and that's the way it is.
Can we talk policy, please, says Karen, and not make decisions based on a debate/show? Well, basically what's being done, Karen, is we've already said it. I think it's been said many times here that, you know, the Biden administration has crafted, I think, exquisite policy in many cases. I think the transformational infrastructure package was extraordinary. But that said, the reality, as John has kind of said, is what it is. And post-debate/show, you see, and I love this word that John used, an enfeebled man, a weakened top-of-ticket guy who can't express himself, can't marshal the right thoughts and right words.
Mark, why do you think it's almost even? Because just what the listener's point was, people understand the policies. The policies of Biden and the policies of Trump are completely opposite. We haven't talked about the 2025 project. We haven't talked about the question of aid to Ukraine. We haven't talked about the unfolding drama now with Taiwan, with evidently the Chinese making more and more aggressive stands, perhaps perceiving weakness. I mean, all of these issues are huge. And do I trust? I'm not here. I'm not here to just bash Trump. I mean, that's not my goal. But there is a clear policy differential between these two. And the reason that Joe Biden has the support that he has today, despite his own personal situation, is because people will not vote for Donald Trump.
But he can express himself, Mark. Sorry for yelling. It's just frustrating, says Sandy. Yeah, well,
why are you yelling?
Maybe he can.
He can, but he's not. Look, go back and watch the tape of the debate. He simply couldn't do it. And you can't be the commander in chief. You can't win an election simply by bumbling around. And it's killing me to say this, Mark. I wish Joe Biden were the old Joe Biden and could do what he has to do. There's nobody tougher, nobody better. But he's 81 years old, and I use the word enfeebled, and I believe he is.
Well, I'm glad we got a chance to talk about this on a day that Adam Schiff steps forward and says Biden should drop out. I do think that weakness at the top of the ticket has these inexorable effects on other races and
And how
other things that are
horrifying, in
important.
my mind, to think of Donald Trump serving 4 more years as president. Just take a look at Project 2025. Listen to the differences on foreign policy. Mr. Senator Vance may be a lovely man, may have a wonderful wife, may have a great story, and his book, Hillbilly Elegy, is certainly an eloquent testimony to his personal strength. But he's a man who opposes aid to Ukraine. He's a man who opposes a woman's right to choose. And all I can tell you is those are just a few of the policy things. We'll be talking a lot more as days go by. And may I make one other comment? When people ask me, do you compare Trump to Hitler? The answer is no, I don't. I don't compare anything to Hitler. But who compared Trump to Hitler? Senator Vance.
The little trivia note on Vance's wife. You know what she does, John?
Yeah, she just resigned from her law firm here in San Francisco, which
And
also had
what
an
kind of
office
law
in
did they
Washington,
do?
D.C. And she's introducing him tonight at the Republican convention.
And what kind of law did they do? Corporate law. And who did she clerk for, John? Do you know that?
I certainly do. Chief Justice Roberts, but also for a
That's
man who was
exactly
then
right.
a lowly judge who is now a Supreme Court justice.
It is a fact that when you look beyond the superficial, one-dimensional hillbilly elegy story, there are a lot of facts that point to the kind of future you'd have with Vance in charge. And he will be in charge of a lot because Trump will be playing golf. I will,
Well, may I just say to you, it's also the Republican Party. I was a Republican, and I was active in the Republican Party. I was president of the Teenage Republicans. I was the youngest member of the Republican State Central Committee. I worked for Richard Nixon for years. And I want to be crystal clear. This is not the Republican Party. Donald Trump Jr. said it best on the ellipse on January 6th when he said, it is no longer the Republican Party, it's the party of Donald Trump. And what we have learned in this convention is that is absolutely true. And, well, it horrifies me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. You only need to look at who didn't show up at the convention to see how it is no longer the party that you were talking about. By the way, for another time, I want to talk to you about why the F you were in that Republican Party years ago to begin with, because you might have said, you might look back at it wistfully, but I saw a lot of issues. But then again, a lot of good people have come from that world, and you're certainly allowed to have a change of heart. This is a disservice, Mark, from We Run San Jose. This is a disservice, Mark. I love your show, but this doesn't help. There are a lot of people who feel this way. They feel that by talking about this, it's like talking about problems in your family. Don't
It
talk
is our
about the
family.
problem. Yeah.
And what do you do when you have a family crisis? You talk about it. I know it's unpleasant. I'm not happy with what I have to say today. And by the way, as Mark will tell you, and those of you who listen regularly, I've been saying this for a long time. I'm not happy about it, but I would be dishonest if I did not speak clearly and precisely to the issues as I see them. And I appreciate the fact that it is disturbing. If you think you're disturbed, believe me, I'm just as disturbed as you are.
Well, on that disturbing note, we are over the legal limit on disturbing for this segment, so we must say goodbye to the great Professor John Rothmann. He is someone whose podcast is easily digested daily. The Voice of San Francisco with John Rothmann, but the podcast is called Around the Political World with John Rothmann. Again, it's available where all better podcasts exist, and this conversation that we have with him weekly is featured on there as well.
Thank you,
John,
very
we
much.
love you. We love your perspective. These are tough times, and I appreciate you sharing, quite frankly, what you're thinking. So
Thank you for having me.
we'll look forward to next time, my friend. John Rothmann, everybody. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.